There's a model going around right now that lays out a complete dream scenario for XRP, a chain of events that, if they all happened in the next 30 days, wouldn't just move the price. They would completely reprice what XRP even is. And today I'm going to walk you through the entire thing, every single piece of it. But here's what makes this channel different from every hype account flooding your feed. I'm not going to sell you the fantasy. I'm going to take every catalyst on this list and give you an honest verdict. Which ones are actually plausible? Which ones are a serious long shot? And which ones are pure make-believe? Because the dream is fun to look at, but the truth is what actually protects your money. So stay with me to the end, because the most important part isn't the dream at all. It's what's still true even when you strip the fantasy away. Let's get into it. Quick honest note first. Everything here is research and perspective to help you understand the landscape, not financial advice. I'm not telling you what to buy, sell, or hold. You know your own situation better than I do, so take what's useful and leave the rest. So here's the setup. An analyst named Rob Cunningham put together a hypothetical model, and he's clear that it's hypothetical, imagining what would happen if a whole stack of major events all landed before the middle of July. And the list is genuinely jaw-dropping. The Bank for International Settlements classifying XRP as a Tier 1 asset, which would let banks hold it at scale without huge reserve penalties. The IMF recognizing it inside its reserve framework. The US passing the Clarity Act. The DTCC's tokenization rollout beginning. BlackRock announcing an XRP ETF. The Federal Reserve cutting interest rates by 50 basis points. Plus a handful of geopolitical events thrown in for good measure. And the model's whole point is this. It was never about any single one of these. It's about what happens if they hit together. And that idea actually deserves real respect because it's the smartest part of the entire model. The author calls it a flywheel. The logic goes like this. Legal clarity unlocks institutional capital. ETF access unlocks everyday demand. Global recognition unlocks bank reserves. The DTCC unlocks the settlement plumbing. Easier monetary policy unlocks risk appetite. And when all of that turns at once, it stops being a list of news headlines and becomes a self-reinforcing loop. Regulation feeds recognition. Recognition feeds ETF demand. Demand feeds tokenized settlement. Settlement feeds liquidity, and liquidity feeds price, which pulls in even more institutions. In that world, the market would stop pricing XRP as a maybe useful someday asset and start pricing it as a validated piece of global financial infrastructure. That's the dream. Now let's be honest about whether it can actually happen. Let's start with the catalysts that are genuinely plausible, because there are some. The Clarity Act is real. It's moving through the process, and while the timeline keeps shifting, late July or August is the more realistic window. Not tomorrow. This one is a legitimate possibility, not a fantasy. And the DTCC's tokenization rollout is also real. We know a limited launch is anticipated around July, with the system targeted to scale up later in the year. So those two pieces of the dream? Grounded. They belong on a serious list. But here's where I have to slow the hype down, because the next group are long shots, at least in a 30-day window. Take a BlackRock XRP ETF. Could it happen eventually? Honestly, yes, I think it does at some point. But here's the detail the dream skips. BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF often does over $1 billion in volume in a single day, and that's roughly the size of all the XRP ETFs in the US combined right now. BlackRock doesn't move until the volume is there to justify it, and right now, it isn't. So in the next month, unlikely. Then there's a Fed rate cut. The current Fed chair has been openly hawkish, focused on pushing inflation back toward 2%. And there are even voices calling for hikes before year-end, not cuts. So a 50 basis point cut in the next 30 days is one of the least likely things on this entire board. And the BIS and IMF formally classifying XRP at the highest tiers of global finance, those are enormous, slow-moving institutional decisions. They may come someday, but compressing them into a few weeks is wishful thinking. And then there's the group I have to be completely straight with you about, because this is exactly where these dream videos cross the line. One of the items on the list is Iraq revaluing its currency and rejoining the global financial system in a way that somehow lifts XRP. I want to be very clear. That idea has floated around the fringes of the internet for years. It's tied to a community that's burned a lot of people, and there is no credible basis for it. The model's own author admitted he doesn't know much about it, so I'm not going to pretend otherwise to make this video more exciting. There are also items on the list, like certain political acts, that have essentially nothing to do with crypto at all. They're filler. They make the dream feel bigger than it is. And recognizing that is the whole point of watching a channel that actually checks these things, instead of just reading the list out loud and adding rocket emojis. So when you add it all up, honestly, here's the verdict on the dream scenario. A couple of these catalysts are real and in motion. Several are possible, but not in 30 days. And a few are pure fantasy. The odds of every single one landing before mid-July all at once, realistically, almost zero. So if you came here hoping I'd tell you XRP is about to explode in the next month because of this model, I'm not going to lie to you. That's not what the evidence says. But, and this is the part that actually matters, stripping away the fantasy doesn't leave you with nothing. It leaves you with something better because it's real. Forget the 30-day miracle. The genuine, grounded thesis for XRP doesn't depend on every domino falling at once. It depends on a machine that's already being built, piece by piece. Regulatory clarity is genuinely advancing across the US, Europe, and Asia. Real ETFs already exist, and more are lined up. Tokenization of real-world assets is moving from theory into live pilots, and Ripple has spent years quietly wiring its infrastructure, payments, custody, its stablecoin, and its connections into traditional finance, into exactly the rails this shift requires. None of that needs the Iraqi dinar or a surprise Fed cut. It's happening on its own timeline, and that's far more reliable than a wish list. Now let's talk about the price numbers, because this is where I see the most damage done. Some commentators modeling these scenarios throw out a band of roughly $30 to $100 or more for XRP over time. And I need you to hear three words very carefully: over time and modeled. These aren't 30-day targets, and they're not promises. They rest on huge assumptions. XRP capturing a meaningful slice of the trillions that move through global settlement every year, massive tokenization actually playing out, and deep institutional liquidity forming. Ripple has publicly talked about capturing a share of Swift's roughly $150 trillion annual flow by 2030. And if even a fraction of that ever routed through XRP, the numbers get large. But that's a multi-year if, stacked on top of more ifs. So treat any specific price target from anyone, including me, as a story about possibilities, not a prediction you can bank on. Anyone handing you a guaranteed number and a date is selling you certainty that does not exist in this market. So let's bring it all home. The dream scenario is a fun thought experiment, and the flywheel idea behind it is genuinely smart. It's true that XRP's biggest moves will come from many catalysts compounding, not one headline. But the version where it all happens in 30 days is fantasy, and the honest investor doesn't bet on fantasy. The honest investor ignores the magic timeline and watches the real machine, the regulation, the ETFs, the tokenization, the infrastructure, knowing it's being built whether or not any single month delivers fireworks. That's the difference between hoping and understanding. And understanding is the only one of those that survives a bad week. One last reminder before I go. This video is for educational purposes only and is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Crypto is volatile and genuinely risky, and you should always do your own research before making any decision. My only job here is to give you the real picture, the grounded facts, and the honest unknowns, so you can think clearly for yourself. If you appreciate getting the version that respects your intelligence instead of just hyping you up, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. And tell me in the comments, out of that whole dream list, which catalyst do you actually think happens first? I read every single one. Take care, stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next one.